So in this short video, what we're going to do is we're going to analyze a column again, but this time we're going to look at a column which is fixed at one end and free at the other end. Now, we're going to derive the equation for the critical load in the column, and we're also going to derive an equation for the various different buckled shapes or mode shapes for that column. Now, the process is going to be exactly the same as what we went through before. First of all, we're going to determine an equation for the internal bending moment in the column as a function of x in its buckled state. We're going to set up the differential equation of the deflection curve. We're then going to solve the differential equation to obtain the general solution. Then we apply a boundary condition to determine the critical load and the deflected shape of the column. We're going to look at various different sets of end conditions, and it's always going to be the exact same process, the exact same steps. So what we have here is the schematic of the column on the left hand side, fixed free column. We've got the buckled shape in the first mode in the center diagram, so you'll notice that the axial load on the column is PCR, the critical load. We've identified a section up a distance x from the base of the column, and the lateral deflection of the column at that point is V. And the lateral deflection at the top of the column, the max, is delta. Then what we've done is we've taken a horizontal section through the column at the location identified by X, and we've looked at a free body diagram of the structure above that cut section. And it's this free body diagram that we use to determine M, the bending moment internally within the column. So it's relatively straightforward to determine the bending moment internally. It's going to be the axial load times the eccentricity, which is basically going to be the axial load times this distance here. And this distance is going to be delta minus V. So we can say, so the moment at the cut M is going to equal the critical load PCR times delta minus V. Okay, so now we have what we need to set up the differential equation of the deflection curve. So I'm going to abbreviate differential equation of the deflection curve as DEDC. So subbing in our expression for the bending moment would give us the following. And just to say that if you found yourself at this video without watching the previous derivation that we did of the pinned column, I'd say stop this video now and go back and watch that video first, because I'm gonna brush over various different things in here that assumes that you've seen, because I assume you've seen the previous video. So I'm not explaining a huge amount about the differential equation of the deflection curve, for example. So again, just to make things easier to manage, easier to look at, we're going to make a quick substitution and then rewriting that differential equation. And we're going to label that equation 10. This is a non-homogeneous equation, okay? And all that means is that the right-hand side is not equal to 0. And because it's not equal to 0, it makes it a non-homogeneous equation. Now, any non-homogeneous differential equation has two parts to its solution, right? So it has a general solution, and that general solution consists of the complementary solution and the particular solution. So the complementary solution is simply the solution to the homogeneous version of the equation, and we've already seen that in the previous derivation. So what we really have to do now is work out what is the particular solution. Combine the two, and we'll end up with the general solution for this differential equation. So there's a few different terms shooting around there, right? Just to summarize, the general solution is what we're aiming for. That is made up of two parts, the complementary solution and the particular solution. The complementary solution is the solution to the equivalent homogeneous version of the equation, just setting the right-hand side equal to 0. We've already worked that out for a pin column. The particular part of the solution is what we need to work out now. So I'll just say, for the purposes of creating a set of notes here, I'll say that the general solution is... Now, we're going to go ahead and call this equation 11. So we're going to go ahead and label up this equation. I'm going to label this part VC for complementary and this part VP for particular. And again, now as an aside, just because we don't like going sort of blindly from one equation to another from 10 to 11, as a quick aside here, I'm going to just walk you through logically how we arrived at that general solution. So I'll say this is a quick aside. We're going to just sort of work our way through determining this particular solution. So I'm going to use a method called the method of undetermined coefficients. You can look up more details in textbooks or online if you want to find out more information about this. So the basic idea here is that we're going to look at the right hand side of our equation. So let's just rewrite our equation here. V prime plus k squared v equals k squared delta. So we're with this particular method, and I'll just write it down here, method of undetermined coefficients. What we do is we look at this and we say that that is a constant which could be considered a polynomial of degree 0. So we're going to assume VP is equal to some constant A. So again, this is a constant. Okay, so there's no x in there. And a constant could be considered polynomial of degree 0. And because of that, we assume that VP, our particular solution, is equal to A, a general polynomial of degree 0. Now, if the right-hand side of your equation wasn't a constant and it had an x in there, you would propose a different starting solution, a polynomial of a higher degree perhaps. But in this case, that's a constant, so we can simply assume A. If I go and differentiate that, so VP prime would be 0, differentiate a constant, you get 0. Differentiate again, you get 0 again. So sub this back into equation 10, sub these solutions back into equation 10. What would we have? We'd end up with, now the k squareds disappear, and we're left with A equal to delta, which is our solution. And it's on that basis we say the general solution is equal to C1. And again, for the avoidance of any doubt here, we're just going to say that that is the homogeneous or complementary. And this is the particular solution. That concludes our little aside, and we can get back to the engineering. So our general solution has three unknowns. It's got C1, C2, and delta, right? So three unknowns in our equation, and that means we need three boundary conditions. So have a little think, before you see me write it out, what are those boundary conditions? What can we say about the deflected shape of our structure? What can we state as boundary conditions at this stage? Okay, so our first one, the first thing we can say is that the lateral deflection V at the base of the column is going to be 0. So in shorthand, we'll say V for x equal to 0, we'll just put in 0 here, is equal to 0. Remember, V is the lateral deflection of our column. Now, the next thing we can say is because our column has a fixed support, okay, there's no rotation allowed at the base of the column. And what that means is, if I was to differentiate V, I would get the slope of the deflection curve, and the slope of the deflection curve, because there's no rotation at the base, is also equal to 0. And then the last thing I can say is that the lateral deflection V at the very top of the column, which is x equal to L, is equal to delta. Okay, and they're my three different boundary conditions. So I'm going to apply each one of these in turn. Applying number 1, what drops out of that is that C2 is equal to minus delta. So that's essentially taking care of two of my unknowns with that one boundary condition. Now, applying number 2, well, the first thing we have to do is differentiate, because remember the second boundary condition is referring to the first differential of our solution V. And so differentiating, and now subbing in our boundary condition, the left-hand side goes to 0. Now, 0 is equal to C1 times K. Now, don't forget, we made our substitution at the start to give us K equal to the square root of P over EI. Now, we know that K cannot be equal to 0, and so that means that C1 must equal 0. So K can't equal 0 for obvious reasons, because these quantities aren't 0, which means C1 must equal 0. Right, so subbing back in, C1 equal to 0 and C2 equal to minus delta, back into equation 11, would give us V, a function of x, is equal to delta times 1 minus the cosine of kx. And we'll call that equation 12. So this basically gives us the shape of the deflection curve. So let's call that equation 12 and just say what it is. It gives us the shape of the deflection curve. Now we still want to work out what is our equation for the critical load. In order to do that, I'm going to apply boundary condition 3, because remember, we've applied 1, we did that one, but we haven't applied 3 yet, so we're going to apply 3 now, which was V, lateral deflection at the top, is equal to delta. So subbing that into equation 12, So the left-hand side would simply become delta equals delta 1 minus the cosine of KL, which simplifies down to delta times the cosine of KL must equal 0. We're going to call that equation 13. Okay, and we'll do our usual approach to this, which is to say that either delta is equal to 0 or the cosine of KL is equal to 0. Now, if delta is equal to 0, there is no deflection and the column remains straight. So this is our trivial solution. Doesn't get us very far. But the non-trivial solution is when the cosine of KL is equal to 0. So let's just write a quick note on that to get us that far. For the cosine of KL to equal 0, you can probably see where this is going if you've watched the previous derivation. For the cosine of KL equal to 0, right, we have to ask ourselves, what values do I need to plug in and replace in place of KL for the cosine to evaluate to 0? And that's really what we're trying to do here. And so KL would need to equal n times pi over 2, where n is equal to 1, 3, and 5, and so on and so forth. So odd integers. So if you sub in 1, 3, 5, etc., into this expression in place of n, you will, and then evaluate the cosine of that, you will get 0. So that's essentially the rule. And so we can replace our k with what we originally replaced it with, and we can say that the square root of PCR over EI is equal to n pi over 2 for those values of n. Okay, and then rearranging to make PCR the subject of the equation. Excellent. What's this telling us? Well, referring back to, we'll call that 13 actually, or rather 14, just to wrap it up. Referring back to our equation for the critical load for a pin-pin column, we can see that this essentially is 4 times smaller. Okay, so the critical load, you take a column, the same length, the same properties, the same cross-section, shape, etc. Exact same column. By removing the pin at the top, you reduce the critical Euler buckling load by a factor of 4. So that gives you a sense of it. Getting to this point, if this is the first time you've worked through this particular derivation, it's going to feel probably like a lot of jumping from one random idea to the next. And you'll really need to look at a few of these derivations, and indeed you'll need to look back over this several times to work your way through it before it starts to feel like it makes sense and before it starts to feel intuitive. But remember, we're doing the same thing every time, and indeed for all different sets of boundary conditions. We're simply taking our column, we're buckling the column, okay, so we're looking at the first mode of buckling, okay, because it's always the Euler critical buckling load we're after. So we look at the column in its first mode of buckling, we look at its deflected shape, and from that we work out what is the internal bending moment at some point in the column. Now what we've actually done there is we've said I have a load that's applied to my column that has deflected it or buckled it in its first shape, and the equation for the internal moment that you get is the internal bending moment when the column is in that buckled state. Okay, so once you've done that, you plug that into your differential equation of the deflection curve, which is simply just a differential equation which is based on the deflected shape of the column, and you want to solve that differential equation, which essentially means you're integrating the equation to our general solution. The same for every set of boundary conditions. Now after that, we apply the specifics of our set of boundary conditions to the general solution of the differential equation, which remember is just an equation for V, the lateral displacement of the column. And in doing so, we work out an expression, an equation for V that is specific to our set of boundary conditions. And what can drop out of, or what does drop out of the bottom of that equation when we plug in another boundary condition, is the value for the critical load for that first mode of buckling. So again, go through this a couple of times, even refer to some other textbooks which will explain it. They'll be doing much the same thing, but they might explain it slightly differently, and that can often help you get to grips with the material. So we'll just finish this out by summarizing what does the deflected shape look like for, let's say, the first two modes. So if I was to sub KL equal to n pi over 2 back into equation 12, that would give me my buckling deflections, or my mode shapes. Okay, so we can sketch those out. Okay, so this is my n equal to 1. And the next buckling mode up is given by n equal to 3. Okay, so that more or less wraps up our discussion of that set of end conditions. Now, at this stage, you'll have seen me and yourself, you'll have worked through the derivation of two sets of boundary conditions, the pinned and the fixed free. We're going to go on and look at the fixed end conditions next. But before you watch me work through a video, try and do that yourself first. So basically, go through the same steps and try and work out equation for the critical load for a fixed column. And you're probably going to run into some roadblocks. You mightn't end up getting all the way to the end, but if you do that first, attempt it first yourself, when you watch the video where I do it, it's going to make an awful lot more sense to you and you'll get an awful lot more out of it. So I can't recommend that highly enough.